All right, thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order on January 25th, 2024. All those who are willing and able, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Exciting for tonight is we have a Love of Learning segment. This is our favorite segment always at school committee meetings, where we get to show off our teachers and our students. So tonight we have the Tech Ninjas and Miss Mackey-Knowles and Miss Wilbur and their students. Dazzle us.
Little razzle-dazzle stuff meeting.
And today I'm joined with, we have a tech ninja who also works as a TV agent. They have a lot of hats that they wear. So tonight I'm excited to be joined by Brandy Wilbur, who is our library media specialist at the high school. But really she's the secret one-to-one director of the K-12 program and teaches the Tech Ninjas. So the Tech Ninja program started around 2015-16 in my office when I was the vice principal at the high school. And it's grown to so much more because we have an actual teacher with them. And she's going to talk a lot about all the things they do. They basically replace a full-time technology person in our budget because of all the in-house repairs. So we're really excited to hear from the students firsthand, because not only does it save the district money, but it's a really great program where the students are learning such exceptional skills that they're going to discuss in a little bit. So, Ms. Wilbur?
I just want to emphasize that, Ms. Mackey-Knowles, when you started this program, it was in its infancy stages. We didn't really know the direction it was going to go. We didn't really have an outline of a job description for the ninjas. It just has morphed into something amazing. And so I want to shout out to you and give you kudos for really having the vision to develop this program way back when. So shout out to you.
And a shout out to Brandy for making it the gem it is today.
Okay. So I'm Brandy Wilbur, and I'm the digital learning specialist up at the library. Part of my role is part running the library and assisting the teachers. We run the one-to-one technology there. I have my students work with me not only in the library, but we also have an innovation lab up there, which I'll talk a little bit about, and the one-to-one for the whole district. So these students are really exposed to a lot of different types of technology and problem solving every day. The real part of the Ninja program, like the vision like from Latanya that I've helped push forward, was really to model the skills they're learning against industry standards. So, you know, we're always talking to our reps at Apple, we're talking to our reps with Dell and HP, and what are the skill set they're looking for an entry-level person to come in. So we're trying to make sure that we have, they're learning how to test and they're learning how to repair, and the customer service piece is really important. So my job is to kind of develop how we push the students through that. And luckily, we have a lot of students that keep coming back. So they're sharpening their skills every year. I'm just giving numbers from this semester, or this year, is that we have 20 ninjas first semester. I had all 8 blocks, I had students, which made it awesome for getting work done quickly. 9 of them are veterans. We have a few of them here tonight. This semester I have 16. 7 of our 8 sections I have ninjas. And again, 9 are veterans. It's not all the same veterans. So depending on their schedule, they fit it in. So the ninjas are able to take the class over and over each year, as long as it fits in their schedule. So a lot of these students choose to give up a study hall period to then be a ninja. So school first, if they have a test or a paper to finish, they get to do that. But I'm always saying, give me 15 minutes of your time, and I have something for you. They're awesome. So, and it shows, I think, that they like the program, that we have them coming back year after year. I've set up a training program based on those industry standards. There's videos, and the students help put these together. These are veteran students that actually helped me design the training program. We have videos. I do a lot of setting up peer mentoring, depending on skill sets. We walk through troubleshooting. How does that look every day? Recreate the problem. See if you can, try our first few fixes. If those don't work, what's next? So we have like a little chain that they go through and learn how to troubleshoot, as well as they're dealing with teachers, students all the time, and faculty, staff, helping them out. They got a call, you have a ninja to come down? We send them all over the building. We take them all over the district to help with things every day, which is awesome. And now with our new innovation lab, they're all getting trained on all of the equipment that we have in there, which I'll show you. And I believe it was 230 tickets that we do. We track all the devices. We're done in semester 1. So I'm pretty proud of the kids. They work really hard. The extra part that we started is the iLab support. So we have teachers, students booking the space to do podcasting, to make posters and laminate posters, we have another interactive board like that in there. Sometimes they use that for trainings and meetings, sewing machine, 3D printers. They're proficient in all of these technologies that we're offering the school. So if I'm teaching a class with English or history doing research, the students are running the front desk, supporting the classes, and students are using the iLab. So we really have a well-oiled machine, and it's fantastic that we can do that with students. They're great. So what I'd like to do is introduce Niall. He's going to speak to you a little bit about his experience and all the different skills that he's learned during his time as a ninja.
Hello, I'm Niall. I'm a senior. I've been doing tech ninjas for 4 years. So starting off as a freshman, I really was kind of not great at hardware, like the hardware side of computers. Dabbled a little bit in it, but it wasn't great. But since then, I've definitely developed my skills for that tremendously. I've learned, so we work on the Chromebooks a lot, and I've started personally work on a couple of MacBooks, which are a lot harder to do. And currently, the only other person doing those is one of our IT specialists. So I've gone to that level, and even on my off time, I've started to work on other projects. I've built 3 computers at home, worked on a couple electronics, and now that I've started to learn more about this, and started to learn more about this, and like really got a feel for it. I've kind of decided that's what I want to do because I love it. It's one of my passions. So I'm applying to colleges as a computer engineer major, and so this is perfectly sets me up for all of that.
Thank you, Niall. I just want to emphasize what Niall said in terms of he's at the MacBook level where our employee specialist works on them. Right. So now we have a student that is doing what an employee would do. And I think it's timely to just talk about, as we talk about the budget and we talk about commitment to career and technical education, this is another pathway. It might not fall under innovative pathways with our advanced manufacturing and our business and finance and the plumbing and heating with the After Dark program, but here's another pathway we're giving our kids, and you're an example of going into that. So congratulations and thank you.
Are you guys getting certain certificates for different, like the ability to work with Dell or with Apple or whatever, like certifications?
So the app, HP and Dell offer certificate programs to be entry-level technicians, which allows us to call them up and get better experience than if I just called on my own. And we have online portals to order parts, things like that. So the HP director, or our rep recently, we're getting that set up because of the purchases we're doing for the new elementary building, qualifies us to get that free opportunity for our students. Awesome. And we also have it for Dell. And I know, Daniel, you definitely started or finished? Not finished, but they're working on it. So when we don't have a lot of computers to fix that day, students always have passion projects, which Daniel's going to talk about. We have this Dell certification. We're going to be adding in the HP certification. So they'll come out with, and those certificates I think are good for 2 years, and then they can re-up them. So they will leave with skills that any college they go to, any entry-level tech, it will help them get a job for sure.
And there is actually an innovation pathway that aligns with what we do, and Randy and I sat and spent a lot of time with Dr. Bacon on deciding that, but right now the plate is a little full with the,
Right.
the pathways and pushing them out, but we already have something so far along that we'll be able to slide in and open up some opportunities with actually Mr. Gillette. So we're pretty much a big team, the TV, AV, plus the Tech Ninjas, so we're excited that we'll be able to do some things in the future together too.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, if it rolls under there, because then obviously we're eligible for different kinds of monies.
The grant work is pretty substantial right now.
Yeah.
And so I gave Dr. Bacon permission to pause because we already do have such a strong program. And keep in mind that Essex Tech was really excited when we met with them that they are pumping up their advanced manufacturing. We are so far ahead of Essex Tech in their advanced manufacturing, they may be visiting us to see what's going on. So it's not an official pathway yet, so the funding isn't there, but it's all queued up to go.
It's great.
And we've had Essex Tech, Linfield, other schools visit us to see what is your model of library and technology, because in the age of budget cuts and libraries closing, how do you keep your program? The library is the heart of Swampscott Public Schools, and that was obviously a lot of work over the last 5 or 6 years to redo it, open it, and staff it, and put this program that keeps the one-to-one program alive and keeps all of the things that we do within reach in a teachable manner. So I'd love to hear from Daniel as well.
230 tickets, and that was first semester. That's amazing.
It's a lot. The tickets take a couple hours when they're trying to diagnose and decide, and it could carry over more than one class period where they have to either leave notes for someone to finish it if it's a device that needs to get back in someone's hands. So there's a lot of coordination there with the skill set, not to mention going out to Brandy and saying, we're out of screens.
Who didn't do the inventory? No.
I know, right?
Okay, I'd like to let Daniel have a minute to talk a little bit about what's coming up next and part of what talk about what his passion project is in a program we're kind of revamp and get out there.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I am a junior. So when I was in 8th grade at the Swampscott Middle School, I started a Tech Ninjas program with students at the middle school that were interested in learning about how to fix Chromebooks and so I had a good group of kids that were interested, and for my passion project, I decided that it would be a good idea to bring that back because it like Miss Wilbur and I were talking about this, but there are a lot of students that are coming to the high school, when they apparently sign up for the class and they don't want to be there, and our goal is to try to eliminate that. So one of the goals for this new revamped SMS Tech Ninjas program is to eliminate basically recruit people that want to join our high school ninja program. So the plan is to visit the middle school twice a month and teach basic understanding of devices and repair skills. I'm going to be working with Miss Wilbur to create little mini lessons, and then we would evaluate in June how that goes, and hopefully create a finalized plan so that any other ninja at the high school next year could also do what I'm planning to do right now. And that's really it.
I think it's important because just like with robotics, bringing robotics down to the middle school, you're building a feeder program, right?
Yeah,
And that's what you're doing, Daniel. You're encouraging those kids to invest in the Tech Ninja program here at the high school. We did it with band. We brought it down. We've done it with robotics. We have such a strong robotics team, and this is just another area we're doing it as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the part that really fits with Daniel is he happens to have our class during, like, that overlaps with lunch block, which also overlaps with the middle school lunch block. So I've been working with folks at the middle school trying to figure out timing, but we can do it during the day. We're going to have working lunches. He's going to present. The kids are going to learn. And it will help when they go to sign up for classes for the high school to have a better understanding of what it really means. Either like, I get students like, why am I here? This is not what I thought it would be. And we're like, okay, that's fine. We'll figure something else out. And other kids like, I didn't know it was like this. Can I get in? So we're trying to just even that out and give students a little bit more understanding of what it is. So when they schedule themselves, they know what they're doing. And maybe they'll like it, and maybe they'll tell their friends, and somebody else will like it. So mini lessons, create a little program, and our goal is to run that in second semesters to do that, to coincide with course selection.
I'm really excited too that Daniel's a student, and next year you'll be a senior, but this is what you want to do with your spare time. You want to bring this program to the middle school and train younger students because you had that opportunity, and we know it, there was some transition period there with the library for a bit, and so now it's in like a really stable place, and it's all renovated and looking beautiful there, and they've got very organized spaces to work. So, yeah, I don't know. Did you have anything else you want to add? Or are you good? Great.
Pretty awesome.
Nice job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Committee comments.
Committee comments. Sam, you want to start?
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know, but SOCA, the Students of Color Association here at the high school, has been running an event called the Heritage Festival for the past couple of years, where they encourage people from different cultures, different backgrounds to come and set up tables and have food. And it's been a really good festival. We had some ROC participation, but generally it's been a smaller event they've had it the past couple of years. So this year we're talking about making it more of a town-wide event. So presidents from clubs including SOCA, ROC, but also the ADL and a lot of other clubs at the high school, we're communicating to make it a more town-wide event. We're planning on having it at Town Hall sometime in May. And we're still in the very early stages, but it's just exciting to announce that that's going to be happening on a wider scale. So, yeah.
That's great.
Awesome. Keep us updated.
Yep. And then we still have the student versus teacher basketball game is going to be coming as well. So.
Oh, good. Do we have a date on that one?
Sometime in March, not for
Okay.
sure yet. I think there is a date. I don't know. I might not have it right now.
Have you
but
been
I'll let
recruited,
know.
Mr. Cosmo?
I'm worried about my knees and stuff. Yeah.
Already making excuses up there, Coach.
The 13th, March 13th. Yeah, you're right.
I like the excuses already.
I'm going.
He'll have braces on his knees.
Karen.
I don't have anything tonight.
Noelle.
I do. So as you know, the band is fundraising. So now we are at $13,626. And that is with one fundraiser alone. And we will be doing like a calendar next.
okay, good.
Yes,
Okay.
where like it's like a $20 calendar, and then every prize is $25 or above, and every day like we pick a name, and it's very good. So if anybody wants to buy a calendar for me,
Yes,
that
don't
would
forget
be,
us.
Yes.
I will.
Yes.
Yes.
What's the goal? Just as much as you
Just as
can.
much as possible, just
Like you
because
prefer.
like airline tickets are very expensive.
Right, because you're Florida this year, you're not just in a bus.
Yes,
Right.
yes, we are flying this year. Grades close Friday as well, and the Model UN trip is next week. We are going to Boston for the Bossman Convention, which, as Mrs. O'Connor and I were talking about, we have been going to for a very long time, which is very nice.
Great.
Great.
Very long.
No, I like that.
Amy, have anything for comment?
No, I was saying that I went to that when I was in high school at the same hotel, and back in 1985. So
Yes.
Oh, okay.
a lot more rules these days.
All right.
No other
All
comment.
right. So Glenn
No, I'm all set, thank you.
and John.
All set, thanks.
So surprised. I'm good too. So let's just carry on.
All right, so superintendent's report, I have one item tonight. You may or may not realize that on Tuesday was Miss Herrick Stella's one-year anniversary with the Swampscott Public Schools, yes. And since she joined us, you know, she was Director of Finance. And tonight I am bringing to the committee that I am changing her title to Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. And in your folders tonight, you have the justification for that and the draft of the letter, which I hope to be signing tomorrow. You know, as a director, and a director of finance, your role is limited to, you know, just finance. And since Ms. Stella has come on board, her broader scope of responsibilities has really warranted this title change. You know, it signifies a shift from more focused financial management role to a leadership with strategic focus. She's been very involved in our vision and mission and district strategy, and every conversation we have, whether it be at central office or as often as we touch base, she doesn't just stay in the financial lane. It's really about, you know, making sure we're adhering to the policies of the district, looking ahead to collaborating with the principals. I think there's been more collaboration in meetings between the building leadership and central office than in the past, really involving them in the conversations with the budget, explaining the budget. I brought before the committee the fact that this was the first year in my tenure that the entire budget book was brought before the leadership team, and for a good hour in this room, we went through line by line, page by page, and it's the first time I've seen the building principals very comfortable asking questions and trying to develop their own financial growth. That stemmed from my experience as an elementary principal where the budget seemed foreign. I knew I had little discretionary money. I didn't know what capital was. I used to ask Mr. Baker, what am I supposed to put in for capital? And so, you know, as an educator, you talk about professional development. Ms. Stella has really provided that professional development to our leadership team. And there have been more visits to her office, and she's so approachable to ask questions, clarifying questions. You know, the other thing is providing professional development in the finance and operations departments within her office. I think she's really encouraged payroll and you know, the other finance person to really expand their knowledge, attend professional development, and then there's long-term strategic planning, which she does with the educational vision and mission and where we're going. It's not a conversation about this year's budget with Ms. Stella. It's a conversation about where we're going, how the decisions we make this year are going to impact next year's budget and the following year's budget, and really forecasting the path forward and the decisions that we should make. I just want to close with, in her short tenure, Ms. Stella has demonstrated exceptional performance, innovative solutions, and significant contribution to the district's success. She is deserving of this elevated title and recognition of those achievements. I do also want to mention that this title change does not come with any monetary increase. Her contract remains the same. It is simply a title change at this point, but you know, her high level of involvement in communications, whether they be at these meetings or phone calls with individuals and explaining the work that we do and what our goals are and where we're going and how we make those decisions, is really an asset to the district. So I have linked, as I said, the draft letter. It does mention that there is no monetary compensation for this title change. I just think she's most deserving of it. And it makes me very settled when I have to be out of the districts, knowing that I have two very strong assistant superintendents, and I don't have to get a phone call unless it is a critical emergency. I just want to say I value you as a colleague. I value you, your opinion. I think we have a relationship where you can say anything to me because I'm still learning, and I always learn from you. And so I want to thank you for the work that you've done here in the last year.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I think it's well deserved.
Thank you.
Committee comments, I'm sure you have them.
I do. And first, I think it's a great idea. The budget book, you know, having been through this many times, I thought was incredibly thorough, incredibly easy to read. When we talked a couple weeks ago, that whole meeting was great for us just to talk about what we're looking for, more detail we were looking for. And as, just to share with everybody, I'd sent on a couple different occasions, emails to Cheryl, to the superintendent, to the chair, just about how pleased I was with just the raw data, putting it into something that we could just deal with. So I think it's great, and, I'm all for it, absolutely.
I'll jump in and say I have really enjoyed working with you, especially when it comes to negotiations. You've been a huge asset to the team, and not just simply there as the dollars woman, but as, to your point, superintendent, of knowing what the plans are for the district and what's important in a broad sense. So I very well deserved.
Thank you.
Yep, and I agree. I just to add to that, what I appreciate is your kind of calming influence, if you understand what I mean by that.
Oh, yes.
We all might be going back and forth, but you're like, okay, let's go to this slide and let me explain this so we all get it. So, I do appreciate, your insights and your contributions on that front.
I would echo that she talks me off the ledge on a daily basis.
For that, we are grateful.
And I appreciate, as the school building committee chair, how efficient you are with those invoices and our change orders and getting the bills paid. It's very, I know our contractors and our subs are very happy with the efficiency. And then you have this other project with the IRA grant that you're taking on, which is awesome.
Which, that's part of it, is, this is your first school building project, and you really jumped in a seamless transition in terms of taking over the responsibilities, and
Just getting up to speed.
never hesitates to jump in and say, let me help out for the betterment of the district, so.
Thank you.
What was the reference you made to the IRA?
It's the, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Oh, okay.
I think we've talked about it maybe a couple times.
Just hadn't heard the acronym.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I think we're fortunate to have such strong district leadership, and we have a great team in place, and you're a big part of that, so thank you, it's great.
All right.
Yay.
On to the next. So every year we have a public hearing on school choice. So now's the time for the school year 24-25 hearing on school choice. According to Chapter 76, Section 12B of the Massachusetts General Laws, we have to have this hearing, and all interested persons shall be given opportunity to be heard. I need someone to make a motion to open the school choice public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so Superintendent, do you want to speak on why we do this?
Sure. Do you want to ask if anybody in the audience first, or do you want to do that out of order?
Oh, I was just thinking maybe you should
Talk a little bit about it?
discuss why we do this.
Sure.
And what it means. And
So each year, a school district has the option to opt into school choice or opt out of school choice. Historically, Swampscott Public Schools has never been a school choice district. School choice would allow students and residents to live in other districts or towns, other communities, and they would come into our schools under school choice. Peabody's school choice, I think Salem's school choice as well. Historically, as I said, we've never done it. Our philosophy for as long as I have been in this district, first of all, we didn't have a lot of extra space. And even though we have the space now, one of our goals is to grow the Boston program, our Metco program. And so if there are additional seats, we really want that program to go up. At its height, I think we're up to 70 students from Boston, and we're in the 50s now. And it really is a commitment of our district to grow that program. So my recommendation would be to maintain, our historic decision and not opt into a school choice district.
just out of curiosity, when we opt in a student, what do we get paid for that student?
It's less than.
It's less than.
very
what's
low.
Less than
It's remarkably
Yeah.
low. Like last
It
year,
is.
it was
Much
close to
less.
5,000.
Yeah,
less than what we would
correct.
typically
Right,
get.
I think that's
That is
part of our
part of
decision.
it, but it's always, just as with growing the co-program, and the Boston children in the elementary schools, we've been busting at the seams until we open this new building. But more than that, it has been our commitment, and as long, I go back 12, 13, 14 years when we had like close to 70 students, and I really do want to get them in at a younger age. And so my recommendation is that we focus on that, and we continue to opt out of school choice.
Does the committee have any comments? So if there's anyone in the public that wants to make a public comment on this subject, or anyone in our audience, our virtual audience here, who wants to raise their hand and make a comment about school choice, you guys can go ahead and do that, and I'll unmute you. There's quite a few people. It's so nice to see so many people from our teachers in our town on our meeting with us. So seeing no comments, and online either, I need someone to make a motion to, no, you're right. We need to vote first?
No, for sure.
Or motion.
No, you have
I need someone to make a motion to close the hearing.
Okay, I will make a motion to close the hearing.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we will need someone to make a motion not to participate in the school choice for the 24-25 school year.
I will make a motion that the Swampscott School District does not participate in school choice for the 24-25 school
And
year.
a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, seems like such a routine thing, but
It is.
I'm glad we just look at it every year.
We have to report to the state, so.
Okay, and now next on our agenda is the public hearing on the school budget for the year 24-25. And according to Chapter 71, Section 38N of the Massachusetts General Law, this is a public hearing we have to hold. All interested persons will be given the opportunity to be heard. So I need someone to make a motion to open the school budget public hearing.
I will make a motion to open the school budget public
Second.
hearing.
And Amy will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so should we do it in the same order where we discuss it first and then have public comment? Does that seem?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, I just think that seems more reasonable.
Authentic,
to-
yep.
to sort
It
of
seems
discuss it
also
first.
like for most people who haven't had the opportunity
Right.
to hear this.
No, it's just
that-
funny that discussion from the public comment comes first. I don't think
Yeah.
it should.
Yeah, I think it should be discussed first,
Yeah.
so folks
All
out
right.
there, maybe they'll get,
So,
maybe that will prompt some questions.
So
Okay,
Cheryl-
I was hopeful that perhaps people had watched the last two meetings where we dug
Well,
into it. And
We would hope so.
Well,
So-
this is the public.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, ask your questions away.
Yeah.
But what would you like to, Cheryl and I were talking today, we have gone through the budget book, page by page with you. We have done a formal presentation. Do you want us to go through that presentation again, or do you want us to highlight particular slides? What is the will of the committee?
I would vote that we go through it.
I would
think,
too.
I think that, I know the teachers, I think there are a lot of teachers on.
I think there's a lot more people on this than have been, at least on the Zoom meeting. I know people have been watching it on Facebook, but I see a lot of teachers, and I see, do you want to do the budget book? Okay.
We're going to do the budget book because the changes that needed to be made were made in the budget book and not unless
that's-
the
that's fine.
presentation.
Completely.
Okay,
whatever is-
that's fine.
You know, I think we always say that we don't necessarily have an audience at these meetings.
Right.
So I think we have to say the same story again and again, so, because
That's
each
true, yeah.
time
Right.
Yeah, no.
somebody new will hear it.
So the committee requested changes last week that were made throughout this budget book, and Ms. Stella can refer to those. But some of the slides will just, this is my rationale for why we're presenting this budget, and everyone that has it, there's historically and every year, I write a letter kind of outlining how we got to the decisions we got to, and that's just the beginning of the budget book. Our vision and mission is, I mean.
Superintendent, will you just talk a little bit about that, just as a
So
setup
I'm
for
going to
tonight?
read it, unfortunately. I know everybody can read it. Which piece of it? The vision and mission?
No, just about the year, sort of the year in review, your broad over.
I didn't bring my reading glasses.
Sorry. You should, but you know the
I
story.
usually have, I do, but I do. which glasses do I need?
I remember when you didn't need glasses.
Oh, now I need like
Just to
every
throw
kind
that
of
out
glass.
to you.
Yes, I know, we go way back. So every year, we do use the methodology of a zero-based budget. And the guidelines, our town's financial policies, guidelines of 2% plus new growth. And as much as we try to stay within that, we have challenges, as does the general government side of things. We talked about how, when proposing the new elementary school in particular, we expected to absorb the operating cost of that new building and the transportation within the operating budget. We have had some challenges that I own, and so maybe our predictions and forecasts weren't as accurate as they should have been. But, and the 19% escalation in special education costs is unexpected, but did contribute a bit to that. But the process that we use, I think, is important for the public to know, that Cheryl and I meet with the leadership. Then we meet with departments. So even though we meet with the leadership as a whole, we then start meeting with middle school leadership, elementary leadership, high school leadership, special ed department, teaching and learning department, the IT department, and really task them with going through their budgets and just figuring out what the student needs are. We examine the class sizes. We look at the schedules. We try to change the schedules. We look at our commitment to social, emotional, and mental health initiatives. And we also look at future program needs. And one of the things that I took into consideration, and I believe I voiced strongly at last week's meeting, is there are two things that, looking at this budget, I'm committed to. And one is, we were so fortunate that this town supported an almost $100 million elementary school. But there is no way I'm opening a $100 million elementary school and not staffing it properly and not providing the programs that our students need. So it's not about, so I can say this to everybody because we were doing classroom assignments on the big drafts, architectural drawings this week. There are 9 kindergarten classrooms. I don't anticipate using 9. Right now we have 7 kindergarten sections. Unless it's a bubble year, we're going to have 2 kindergarten classrooms open. We're not looking to staff them to bring those class sizes down to something unreasonable. Our class sizes are okay now, and depending on what the census shows and what the numbers are, like our current first grade is very high, which will make second grade very high in 8 sections. We may have open classrooms. That might work to our benefit because we might need our director of technology to have a space over there. We might need our facilities director to have a space over there. The same is happening with first grade. We had 9 kindergarten classrooms designed. We had 9 first grade classrooms designed because our commitment is to keep small class sizes at those primary grades. However, I'm okay where the class sizes are right now. And so we will have 4 classrooms, 2 kindergarten, 2 first grades open. We're not going out there hiring 4 new teachers just because we have that classroom space. So when I say I'm not going to open a building that isn't staffed appropriately, that also takes into account I'm not going to go the opposite direction and start staffing just because we have the space. So that's my first commitment, is that we're going to open an elementary school that meets the programs and needs of our kids. The other thing that we've always said about this consolidated school is that it provides an opportunity for us to create efficiencies. All of the substantially separate special education programs are now in one building. So our assistant superintendent, Ms. Raymond, really looked at staffing within those programs. And now, because we're in one building, do we need all the staff we have? We've looked at traveling staff. Can we reduce FTEs and those positions? And we have. So we really scrutinized what are the needs, what efficiencies get created at this new elementary school, and we've done a really good job with that. That doesn't mean we haven't done the same thing at middle school and high school. Every year, we look at what are the needs of the kids, what are the program needs, and what does the staffing look like. And the second thing that I'm incredibly passionate about, the same as the social emotional focus that we've had in this district since I took over, is, I just referred to it, the career and technical education. I am most proud that we have now become a comprehensive high school. We are not just a college track high school. We offer opportunities to our kids for those students who don't get into Essex Tech from 8th grade because it's such a competitive field out there to get in there, that now we have the After Dark program. And for those that don't know what the After Dark program is, our students can select to take their core academic classes here at the high school, and at 11 o'clock they get on a bus and they go over to Essex Tech, and they can take plumbing, and they can take electrical and other career and technical education paths. We have had 7 students over there. We had 2 graduate last year that went right out into the field. So that is something I'm proud that we're offering, but there's a cost to the district for that. The other programs that we offer, as I mentioned, is through Innovative Pathways grants through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we have received a grant for advanced manufacturing, which we're already looking at expanding classrooms next year because he needs a clean workroom and a messy workroom, so we're already shifting around classrooms up here. That has become incredibly popular, and then we added the business and financial literacy piece to that. The third was supposed to be the IT, but you saw tonight, I mean, timing couldn't have been better that, it wasn't completely planned, but that we have a really strong IT. These kids are getting hands-on experience, and I refuse to compromise that as well. A number of years ago, when I joked with Glenn that he was on the committee when we had, budget challenges then, and the choice was to get rid of all the hands-on programs, and I will not allow that to happen in this district because we are hooking those kids that are not on a traditional college track path. And if it takes an advanced manufacturing class to get somebody through an English class because they're looking forward to going there, then I'm committed to keeping those paths for our kids. So that's, in a nutshell, a little more than I planned to say, but where the thoughts were in this budget.
Do you want to talk about core? This is something for the public that doesn't know about it. Our core plan is our community opportunity, respect, and equity. We've been working on this for a number of years, and when I presented to the committee earlier this year, we were talking about district strategy. This is our district strategy, but it's also our core plan. It is about equity. We have 4 priorities within this: curriculum and instruction, professional development, policies, procedures, and structures, and district and school culture. So these are the priorities outlined in our core plan, which also is our district strategy for 2021-2025. And if you go to our website, there is a huge multi-page plan that shows the work that we've been doing for the last couple of years in this area. Thank you.
So this is a slide that we have discussed certainly a number of times, but it's just a high-level summary of the superintendent's recommended budget. It has been updated since the meeting that the committee had last Thursday, with which there was the vote and to add in the reading interventionist, as well as fully funding the After Dark program, which the superintendent did speak about. So the overall budget increase is now 5.1%, bottom line. We've talked about this quite a lot, but special education costs are typically those costs that grow far outside the financial guideline that we are given. As the superintendent did mention, and we talked about the new school and where those efficiencies are, a lot of them are in that support staff. And so our special education budget increase of 5.4% would be much higher, but a lot of the staff efficiencies that we're seeing actually hit that cost center. So it looks much better than you would expect, especially having 19% tuition increases over the last 2 years.
I have a question regarding the After Dark program. Does that come out of our budget as opposed to the kids who go to Essex Tech, that comes from the town?
Correct. Comes out of our budget, and as we mentioned before, the challenge is we've been paying that out of ESSER, and that's something we now have to absorb out of the operating budget.
So one of the things that I was thinking about, especially as you were talking last week about sort of your wish and what you love to be able to do versus what you have to do. I wonder if there's a way to sort of set up that ask separately so that it can go into, and I don't know, I mean, I would defer to you, Ms. Stella, that it wouldn't necessarily be a part of our budget, but perhaps part of a stabilization budget so that we knew, and whatever is not spent can then just revert back to the town. I don't know if that would soften the ask.
I mean, like, depending on how many kids.
Yeah, so, if we have it, we're asking for to accommodate 7 kids, but if it turns out that there's 5 kids, that then, we hand that back.
Well, and they keep increasing, so I think we have 7 kids this year at 50,000 or so, approximately 50,000. We're estimating next year, if we have 7 kids, it's going to be 70,000.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have to find within the budget. So, I mean, I think it's open for discussion, like, can't hurt to discuss it.
Rather than just sort of adding it in with the hope, like you had said, look, I would love it to be 20 kids. But if it's not.
There has been a pattern of about 7, and last year there were several that dropped. So, but we're on the hook. We don't get that money back once they've.
If they drop out.
Right, they've committed to that program. Right.
Yeah, because they took a spot.
Right.
It follows the October 1st enrollment.
Yeah.
So provided they're still in the program when they do the October
Right.
1st, then we get charged. So even if they dropped out, say, after that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like here, we wouldn't lay off a teacher because a student drops out.
Correct, right. Yeah.
Okay.
So a large part of the discussion amongst the committee, amongst tri-chairs, really, special education costs and their major drivers. I think everyone is probably well aware last year we had a 14% rate hike to our out-of-district tuitions. Rates for this year are over 4%. Typically, they've really been closer to the 2 to 3. So these are, tuition increases that are just compounding. Transportation, as we know, can be incredibly expensive. And then foster care and homeless transportation for us is totally unpredictable. It really just depends on who might be coming into the district. It's a very hard thing to budget for. We've seen a large increase in the need for interpreters and translations as well within the district.
And the only other piece that I want to highlight is the North Shore Education Consortium. It says NEC estimated 8% increase, and KOG program is estimated at 14% increase. And for those that don't know, since we have a large audience, the North Shore Education Consortium is our first out-of-district placement because of their reasonable cost. We're one of 18 member districts, so because we pay a membership fee, our students that are enrolled in their programs, that is the most cost efficient. However, they, like everybody else, have had a major HVAC issue in their most needy program. The Kevin O'Grady School is, has lifts for adults, and they kind of have kicked this can down the road. I shouldn't say they, as chair of their board, we have all kicked this down the road, and now we're at a point where their estimate came in $4 million over what they thought it was going to be. They had one bidder. So, they're as touched as we are on building costs. And as a board, we just decided we're getting a one-time assessment, and then our our tuition increases are going to be substantial. So, I've mentioned before that as a consortium or as a collaborative, they got none of the COVID money. They got no ESSER. So every time they had a need, they came back to the member districts. One of the things that we proposed and did go through is that the non-member districts that send their students there as well got far less than a Lynn or a Peabody that have higher enrollment. But, we work really hard at making it equitable, because where am I going to put our students if the consortium closes,
Right.
and the Kevin O'Grady.
It's just stunning that that doesn't qualify for any state aid.
They're fighting it. The executive director, Francine Rosenberg, over there is, I think, currently the president of the collaboratives, and so she is advocating at the state level, and they're arguing their case, but this has gone on for years, so, yeah, it falls to the member districts.
This comes up quite a bit, and I think when you live and breathe, school finance, you kind of take this for granted, and it is hard to really explain how our budget can shift from one day to the next day, to the next week, to the next month. And so this is just a few examples of something that occurred within 1 week to show how volatile the special education costs can be for a district. So, you have a student move in, we are quoted $350 a day we have to spend to transport them. That's, again, not something that's budgeted. Through registration, we find out there's students moving in that has high needs at medical and is actually hospitalized at the time. Again, not something that was known. And as the superintendent mentioned about the North Shore Education Consortium, that's something that we would never have anticipated, is far outside any of their increases that they've ever had before. So, there can be a lot of volatility within special education costs. This was actually, I believe, something that Finance Committee, someone on Finance Committee had requested when we had presented our first quarter projection. And I thought it was actually fairly interesting to look at myself. It's just looking at 10 years of actual expenditures for special education, and I actually included every single funding source so we could get a true full picture as far as what are we spending. So it's not just our appropriate or revolving funds, it's circuit breaker, our grants as well too that support special education. And our 10-year average increase is 5.9% total over 10 years. This one cost center has grown $5,468,318. So, as we've talked about the difficulties within meeting the 2% plus new growth, you can see that this cost center really impacts our ability and can take away from other aspects of our budget, because this is something that's mandated that we must provide. I will note there was 1 year with which FY21 our special education expenditures went down 1.8%. We were shut down, so we weren't providing services. But as you can see, the vast majority of the dollar changes are positive. This is just a history of our circuit breaker fund. Circuit breaker, as the committee knows, but perhaps maybe others don't, is money that we do receive, and it's specifically to be spent on special education expenditures. There's a lot of limitations around it. It's a reimbursement back to us based off certain special education costs we incur, and you have a certain threshold you have to hit, and then there's a percent that the state gives back to us. So this just gives you a history from FY22 up to the 25 budget, as far as what we've received, what we spent, and then our circuit breaker balance, which is that blue bar that the committee can see. Part of the agreement with the town last budget cycle was that we would spend our circuit breaker down to $450,000 before we tapped into a special education reserve fund. Based off the projections I've presented to the committee, our Q2 projection, we have a negative $200,000 deficit. I fully expect us to spend that circuit breaker down to that balance. And so that's what's representing the 450. So then we don't have money to roll into this year. So we're basically using everything that we're getting at.
Can you talk a little bit about the best practices for circuit breaker?
Sure. So best practice, and this is put out actually by DESE and DLS, is to carry a full year balance when possible, and it is for budget certainty. So in those years with which perhaps you had a child who was tuitioned in that was a really high cost and they've moved out, right? And so you don't actually, your special education costs have gone down a bit. Their guidance is to then take that and try and keep that and hold that in circuit breaker. So when you have years where you have someone move in, perhaps that is a very expensive outplacement, you have this buffer. And that's something that they put out. It's a financial primer they have on circuit breaker. And that's they consider it best practice.
When we agreed to that second special education account and spending down our circuit breaker, was it with the understanding that that would be happening almost immediately, or was this a surprise based on the particularly high cost, the escalation this year in?
So I know when we were all discussing the budget last year and discussing that agreement, at that point, this 14% rate hike was not definitive. I mean, there was a lot of pressure at the state level to try and not have that because they knew it was going to crush districts. So I don't remember the exact date which that became final, but it was long past our budget cycle. And because that was such a huge increase, and at that point unknown whether that would occur or not, that's where the thought process came in as far as creating the special education reserve and creating this. And so I don't think any of us really thought that 14% would be coming out from OSD as far as our rate increase. And then I will say, couple that on top of bad luck, in that we have, when we look at children that are out of districts, we have our kids that are, and then we have kids that might be. And you can only, within a budget, you can only budget so much for the maybes, and unfortunately, a number of the maybes became yeses this year. So there are two things that came into play with that.
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, it was my impression that that stabilization fund was really for the extenuating circumstances. Mm-hmm. So, and because it happened so immediately, I wonder if this is part of this phenomenon that we're talking about, or if in fact it's problematic that we have spent down too much of that, of our circuit breaker funds. So that rather than it being a rainy day reserve, that it has become sort of de facto our special education budget, that rather than the superintendent controlling that it just becomes something that we have to vote, the town meeting has to vote on. So it's sort of supplanting, it's just moving it out of one and into another, rather than actually creating that stabilization fund, which is really meant to stabilize during bad times.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I think that it's a culmination of two things that happened here. So I don't think anyone walked into this anticipating that we would be having to spend this balance down to $450. And I did not project, and it certainly wasn't budgeted, to be spending almost $2.3 million of circuit breaker this year.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but next year, would you imagine that, because I'm seeing now these 2 years of 450, would you imagine that as we're sitting here a year from now, that we would be looking at the following year at 450 again?
I hope not. I think a lot of that has to do with whether, as well, some of these out-of-district tuition hikes, it's 14 and 4, if we can get those stabilized and a little bit further down. You're right, I don't have a crystal ball, and I think you kind of would have to have a crystal ball, because we do have some out-of-district tuitions that are in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. And all it takes is one of those to no longer be in our budget, and that balance then pops back up. So I would hate to conjecture on that.
Which
And I think the short answer is, I'm sorry, it was unfortunate timing. It is that 14% was uncertain. There was no intent that we were going to go and dip down this far out of the gate. You know, we would have needed a crystal ball to figure that out. So it was just really bad timing with really bad decisions of OSD. I'm sorry, Glenn.
No, that's fine.
So actually, this was a slide that the committee, not last meeting, the meeting before, just asked me to put together. It's just a history of circuit breaker going back to 2016. The green bar is showing you our revenue, the gray bar is showing our expenditures, and the blue bar is showing, you know, the balance that we've carried forward. And so, you know, obviously, as you can see in 24 and 25, that blue bar is diminished from what it has been historically.
Can you tell us, Jess, the lack of the 1 year circuit breaker funds in reserve, what does that do to the overall budget as far as safety net, as far as how does it affect other areas within our budget, not having that in this for FY25, the 1.8 million?
So I would say that how that would impact is that the school committee would be asking for less of a % increase, because if we had a larger balance and I could tap into it more versus just using what comes in, which is required, and goes out, it helps to stabilize that special education cost center a little bit more, which has historically been done. But as you can see, it, you know, kind of bumped up in 2022, and then, you know, has, you know, 2023 it dipped and keeps dipping. So, you know, what it does is it helps for those, like we just discussed. I think we've had 4, if not 5, tuitions this year that we didn't anticipate. It would help to soften that, and then if we have it going forward, then it keeps carrying and it helps soften the budget. So it helps a little bit with potentially the volatility in the special education cost center.
So there's a direct correlation between the dip in this bucket and the need to ask for a higher increase to our budget, to our annual operating costs.
Yes.
Which makes sense too, because if you think about superintendent, you know, back, I'm thinking about my first few years on the board when our, when our operating costs were growing by well over, and that was also at a time when we did not hold those reserves the way that we had been in the last couple of years.
You know, and we have given a shout out, and I think it's important to point out that Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Raymond does a fabulous job with her predictions. Mm-hmm. She's looking at those weekly, and until she took on that position where, you know, here's the percentage, the chance of this student going out. She's somebody that I would think has a crystal ball because she does such a good job. It's, again, just circumstances where we had unanticipated students going out of district that, you know, for one reason or another ended up out of district. So I just think it's important to note that she looks at that chart on a weekly basis, I think. We, when we meet, we review it. She updates us about cases that are going on and what the potential for out-of-district placements are. This was an anomaly, and I think it's just one of many.
But I think, I mean, I remember when we very first started talking about a stabilization fund for special education, it was partly because of the fact that you have to budget for maybes. Mm-hmm. To a certain extent, you have to. And that was, I don't know, uncomfortable maybe for the town side because you were budgeting for something that might not happen. And so that was kind of the way it came about, was we could maybe have this fund that you might need if it does happen. And if it doesn't, it can sit there. Mm-hmm. And that made a lot of sense. Now, you know, like years went by and it didn't happen right away. But I feel like now we're in the position where we've had to spend down this
circuit breaker, so we don't have that. And to what Amy was saying is this stabilization fund is gonna be something that we're gonna just have to use every year, over and over. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that it's not for budgeting for the maybes, now we just know we're
Well,
gonna have
unless-
to use it.
Unless things start to change.
Right.
As Cheryl said, unless the out-of-district tuitions start to level out and we get back to the 2 to 4%
And find a way
increases.
to build.
And also
that
find a way to
circuit breaker
rebuild
back.
Well,
the
and
circuit
also-
breaker.
Right.
Because our special education costs have gone up, our circuit breaker reimbursement is going up.
Right.
And so therefore, that difference, next year's circuit breaker reimbursement is higher because our special education costs have gone up. So it would be nice if that additional money that came in could start building us back.
Right, I
But-
guess that was my point.
Yes. I understand.
Because it seems like a real stabilization fund, and I know that I'm mincing words, but it seems like a real stabilization fund would be just this, and making sure that that is fully funded. That's gonna be what provides us the stability of creating an annual budget that is consistent.
Well, that's what it did. We would prepay out-of-district tuitions, and
Yeah.
that was taken from the budget.
So it's not surprising that the ask for our budget this year is higher.
I mean, that's something that's definitely a conversation we need to have about making sure that the circuit breaker money, especially what's above and beyond what we have now, stays in the budget for next year and the year after. Like, so we do start building it back up because the town reserve fund was meant to be used if we couldn't fund the special education out of this. And at some point, hopefully we build this back up so that it works like that.
Right.
Right? Like that's the
Right,
goal.
that
is
was
to-
the
is
intent,
to-
right.
Right? And so,
Right. Plus-
so we need to make a commitment or make a policy that money, like with the town side, like to make money that circuit breaker is
Will grow.
or at least above and beyond is going back into this. I mean, we're educating these kids. We need to pay for them.
Right.
Right, because
You know,
the other thing that will happen is, or the other, can't think of the word, but if we don't have it fully funded, we have to pay those bills first, so then the impact goes to general education.
Correct.
Somebody suffers if we don't have it
We
fully.
see that
Right.
now. Like,
I mean, we've seen
everything
that for
else
the
in
last
general
5
is
years.
frozen
Right, right.
Like, right? We see that.
Right.
Yeah, we froze it in October.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
plus, when we have the circuit breaker, it keeps those dollars and those decisions here.
Exactly.
We don't have to go anywhere. The educators make the decision about how to spend that. Again, in FY '25, $1.8 million. So that's a big
All right.
thing. Good.
This is a lengthy
I think we have to
budget
move
book.
past the special ed.
Okay.
Like we're never.
What was
I
that?
think you can pick and choose the slides you show out of this
Yeah.
enormous budget book.
I'm not really going to talk, we already talked about the cost centers in the budget, so I'm not going to focus too much here in the interest of time. We did do things a little bit differently with the budget book. The committee's always voted by cost center, but we also wanted to show the budget by location. What is important to note here when you're looking at this, though, obviously, we're opening a brand-new elementary school. And so when you're kind of comparing historical versus this year, Clark, Hadley, Stanley costs are all rolled into the new elementary school lines. Clark still does have some ongoing facilities costs with it. And then, the middle school budget looks like it's, increasing more than one would anticipate, but they do have a new math curriculum that they are paying for, as well as we had to add some positions this year that were unbudgeted, that are rolling into next year for mandated special education support staff. And so it's actually on growing 3.8%. This is just our total budget, including all sources. However, this does not include the town allocation. So as the committee knows, but perhaps maybe others don't know, the town budget does have a lot of school-related costs in it. Healthcare, any number of costs. So once their budget is in a more completed state, and I have the numbers from the Director of Finance from the town side, I will update this slide so it shows the true full budget, including our school appropriation, our revolving funds, our circuit breaker, our grants, and the school costs that are in the town budget. That being said, right now, the total budget for FY25, including the requested appropriation from the town, is $37,700,767. This gets talked a lot, quite a bit. It's one of there's two metrics, well, there's a number of metrics that the state puts out and DESE puts out. One of them is net school spending, one is per pupil expenditures. This is an article that I found that just really talked about how net school spending is the metric that you should use when comparing district to districts. This is straight from DESE, which is why you'll see it's FY22 actuals and 23 budget, because that's the most updated information that DESE has. For FY23, Swampscott net school, the percent above net school spending, so net school spending is a required contribution that the town, between the town and Chapter 70 must make. Most districts spend far more above the required contribution. In Swampscott, for 23, we're spending 41% above the net school spending. What's interesting is that in just these peer districts, for everyone's knowledge, they're the districts that we use when we're bargaining. They were the ones that were agreed upon between the unions, so that's why these are chosen. Amongst our peers, we are tied with East Longmeadow with 41% over net school spending. I actually looked at all 317 districts just to see what the state average was, and the state average is actually 42.5% above net school spending. I was actually rather surprised when I saw this, and it's kind of interesting to see that Swampscott is actually lagging the state average when it comes to the percent above net school spending.
And so net school spending is what DESE says each district should be spending.
Correct. And it's based on, their required contribution is based on a number of different factors.
Who the kids are, how big the town is.
Socioeconomics of the town, where you're located.
Do we have a historical, do we have these numbers historically? Is this something, is this a place where we've lost ground, or is this, have we been lagging like this?
I don't know. I didn't look historically when I pulled this, but it's on DESE's site, so it's certainly easy enough to pull to see. But so I'm not sure. Can't answer that right now.
So this slide is the district goals for the FY25 budget. One of the goals was to add required busing for students, just the required busing for the Swampscott Elementary School. Look at the efficiencies in staffing. At SES, adequately staff the library, media, and innovation centers at the Swampscott Elementary School. We talked about years ago how when we needed to make budget reductions, we did away with librarians. I know that some of my colleagues across the state are asking for input on whether or not to do that. And you can see by our Innovation Center presentation tonight that it was not a good decision. It was important to maintain part-time kindergarten aides. In the past, we had full-time kindergarten aides, but we are conscious about the health insurance costs that are on the town, carried on the general government side, and so these are part-time employees that don't require health insurance. We looked for efficiencies in staffing at middle and high school, to properly staff our English language services for our growing population. I've talked about the fact that our population and demographics is getting much more diverse, and depending on what level our English language learners come in at, they require more services than the higher level students. Therefore, we need more EL teachers to meet the DESE requirements for services. Reduce some of the core class sizes at the high school from 25 to 22. 25 is conservative. We have 28 in classes at the high school. We have 30. And not in every class, but these are core subject areas. And I had our director of teaching and learning look over it because she said, oh, those aren't the core classes. And I said, yes, they are. So I am still working on that with the union. I had discussions with them earlier this week. Reduce the class size in 5th grade from 26. and then implement multi-tiered systems of support, and properly staff our growing career and technical programs. I am missing the next slide, so if you could go to the next slide. I don't know where the high is.
Superintendent, are you saying that we would have full-time aides for kindergarten were it not for insurance costs?
I think, I'm not going to say, there was a time where we had full-time kindergarten aides. I think that's not the only reason we did it. At the time, our class sizes were small enough that we thought they could manage it, but as they started to creep up, having a half-time has been incredibly helpful. If money wasn't an issue, I would support a full-time kindergarten aide in every classroom, just because they're coming in so developmentally behind. Even still, behaviorally, the behaviors in kindergarten are quite a lot to handle, but I think we are sufficiently staffed at halftime. So the next priorities that we did not meet, there's a need for a health teacher at the middle school. A couple of years ago, the same way we did at the high school, we actually kept health at the high school, but we reduced a health teacher at the middle school. We have discovered that it is challenging. It is not meeting the needs of our students. Between the mental health challenges and the substance abuse challenges, it is important that we have a mental health teacher, a health teacher, and we do not have that. We've cut that a couple of years ago, and we continue to do without that and make do. We are implementing a new literacy program, K-5, the same way we did a math program, and without proper funding, we would be rolling it out in a multi-year plan. With complete funding, we would do it all in 1 year, K-5. We have high science. We have a high interest in science classes at the high school, and so there has been a request from the administration for an additional science teacher. And then on a low priority list would be building-based substitutes. And having what that would do is it assigns a substitute to show up at all 5 schools every day. And whether they're substituting for a class or they're covering our student support team meetings or IEP meetings or data team meetings, they're always used. But that is a low priority that's not met within this budget. Thanks for sharing that.
How many years will it take to roll out this K-5 literacy if it's going into
We
multiple
are
years?
still meeting with Dr. Bacon. We have tossed around a 2-year plan or a 3-year plan. We haven't decided yet.
I also do want to note as well, too, there is grant opportunities around this, which she has applied for. So if we are awarded those grants, that would then allow us to either do the full rollout or accelerate it as well, too.
I think you all know Dr. Bacon is the grant master.
Yes.
And so if there's a grant out there, we're going to get it, or she's going to at least go for it, so.
So this slide just shows the historical enrollment in the district, and then mapped on top of that. Thank you for the suggestion, David Grisham. I was able to put our FTEs. It is an interesting visual, as you can see. The enrollment is increasing, and our FTE counts are decreasing. This is something that the committee had requested, so it was mapping same enrollment data, but just showing the IEPs. And I think we've talked about this quite a bit, but we've seen a marked increase, as you can see looking at the graph, in our number of IEPs. And we used to actually lag the state average when it came to number of IEPs, and we've actually bumped above the state average at this point.
I think when the superintendent was talking last time, when we decided to put the money back in for the MTSS, the multi-tiered support systems, I think that was a good way that we were going to try to stave off this curve, right?
Right.
Yes.
Because we don't have a choice. It's either general ed or special ed at this point. And if we had the multi-tiers of support, we would have somewhere in between to maybe not progress students
Correct.
to IEPs.
Right.
Correct.
So, I mean,
Or to
that's
slow
a
it
huge-
down.
And we
for,
talked
for that
about,
short money, it's
Yeah.
potentially a huge money saver.
Correct.
and we talked about the fact that when students get on IEPs, it's 3 to 5 years, because when they transition from one level to another,
Right.
everybody wants a safety net.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you're using the multi-tiered systems of support methodology, it's short bursts, it's targeted,
Right.
and you're not on any kind of legal document or plan, so.
Correct.
This is our staffing count, showing not only this fiscal year, but the budgeted for 2025, as the superintendent has discussed with the new elementary school, we do have staff efficiencies built within this budget.
I don't know if everyone looked at the memo Cheryl sent maybe yesterday or the day before that showed that, sort of wondering, are these staff reductions because of ESSER funded positions that were released or whatever, and it turns out only 10 of them are. So I thought that was like,
I'm not sure that went to the full committee.
I thought there might be more.
Yeah.
I don't
I think it did.
No, I don't think it
No?
did.
I don't think it did.
No.
Oh, sorry.
We'll make sure we get that out. We were looking at several things, and we were looking because a lot of districts are making reductions and just saying they're cutting all of the ESSER positions. One of the things I'm really proud about is we were very calculated in how many positions we actually put into the ESSER grant. You remember the occupational health nurse we did, but we were very, very selective. A lot of them were the building substitutes. So we did not put critical positions within those ESSER funds. So when we do the reductions, we're not necessarily reducing just because they're coming out of ESSER and ESSER is ending. So I think that's important to note, so thank you.
Yeah, no, I just thought that was,
Yeah.
It
I was
does-
sort of surprised.
It just, it seems, it doesn't fit when we think about needing these multi-tiered systems of support, and that are, to see our student population growing, and to see that in 2 years, we have 40 less
Right.
educators. Now, to your point, I know that there were some that made particularly sense at the elementary school.
But keep in mind,
What's the percentage of elementary school versus the rest of the district?
we'd have to, I don't have that off the top of my head.
I would say more than 50%,
Is at the elementary school?
correct.
But we also, I mean, remember last year we lost quite
Yeah.
a few at the high school.
No, at the middle school.
No, but, or the year before that, at the high school, when we did this schedule shift, and
Right.
we looked at the AP
Right.
classes and you know, trying to balance that, you know, having less sections of a certain math class, right? So they would be,
There's a few things. This doesn't have to do with ESSER, all have to do with ESSER ending. And some of those ESSER positions, if you remember, we tried coaches. And the
And that
coaches didn't work.
Yeah.
We had the building-based substitutes, the floating substitutes. Because we had a lot of COVID going around,
Yep.
so we needed substitutes.
And that was a luxury that we
Right.
could afford.
So we were very calculated. The other thing is, what Suzanne just said, is that, you know, long before COVID came in, we did an analysis of the schedules. And so we were trying to leverage that with some of what we were doing. So, yeah, we were very careful in what we put into ESSER for positions.
So this slide has been updated since the committee last saw it last week to include the additional reading interventionist that was requested to add into the budget. So you'll see that our compensation for all staff for FY '25 is increasing 2%. We discussed this before, but what's interesting is that it's still actually below the typical financial guideline that we get from the town. And that's truly because of the staff efficiencies that we see within this budget. And I think it's clear that the main driver behind the 5.1% increase is actually not staffing and not our compensation, because that's only increasing 2%. This is something.
Sorry, before we go on, I just want to be clear that this FY '24 increase of 2.2% versus 2.0 is the total cost and not the actual COLAs and steps and raises that our teachers are seeing there, that they're far beyond that. It's not a question. I know that to be true.
Yeah, it's
correct?
all in. It's all staff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's every single staff in the school department, including crossing guards. So this just, again, these are our peer communities that we use for bargaining and just looking at what is our teacher FTE count and the average teacher pay. The most recent information we do have at the state level is 2022. So you can see that Swampscott's average teacher pay is slightly below the average of our peer communities. It's just, we have a number of sources that we talked about earlier that help to fund the budget, revolving funds. We have money that we have requested out of the town capital as well too, and then grants. So these are just some of the other funding sources that aren't coming from the appropriated budget.
The Nahant revolving fund, is this, do we have a sense yet of the number of kids who are coming next year for 6th grade?
We don't know if it was a one-year contract.
Yeah.
So we don't know, we'd have to go back for discussions on that.
This is just to show, we do fund positions through not just the appropriated budget, but some of our other sources as well. And so in FY25, we have 27 positions that are funded in outside sources. This is just an overall summary of our grants. You can see in 22, that's when ESSER really, ESSER 3, which is the main ESSER for us, was granted, and then, kind of where we're at for 25 at about $3.3 million. This is our total per pupil expenditure information as well too. This is average per pupil expenditure. Again, the most recent data that we have is for 2022. Looking at it in comparison to our peer communities, we're kind of middle of the pack when you look at our average versus our peer communities. And these are just the different programs that we have in-house through student services and just the dispersion of the students through those programs.
It's important to note that if we didn't develop these programs in-house, there's another 439 students that would be out of district. So,
Right.
Do we have to go through these?
It's up to the committee.
Does the committee want us to continue through these next pages? I think that was the high level.
I think that's fine, personally.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much sums it up.
I think it's worth discussing the elementary budget, because you did a lot of work there.
Sure. So as we talked about before, the elementary budget is now one budget, right? So it's be one location. The total budget increase for the elementary school is $129,000, a 1.5% increase. And it's low because, again, this is where we saw the vast majority of our staff efficiencies. As the new school is opening up, we are going to have a co-teaching model for grades 3 and 4. We'll have some shared resources. We are keeping the same level of nursing staff, and we'll have a float nurse available, which will be really helpful to the district as far as driving down some of our nurse substitute costs. As the superintendent mentioned, we had the kindergarten aides were funded from ESSER, and it was important to include those in the budget, but there was lengthy discussions about that, but it is really truly what's best for the district. We did add that reading interventionist to support the multi-tiered systems of support based off the discussions last week. And the elementary librarian, we're moving up from a 0.8 to a full 1.0 now that they'll be supporting the new school.
Perfect.
so does the committee have additional comments that weren't asked during the presentation? Otherwise, I'd like to open it up to community comments, public comments. Anyone here or in attendance on Zoom? Love to hear from you, really, truly. A lot of work has gone to this budget, and there's just a lot.
If you want to say something, Mr. Couchman, you're welcome to.
Wait, you need a,
Wait,
no,
but you have to open it up.
Oh, he'll go.
You have to,
Yeah,
you have to open up the,
it was,
wasn't it already open?
wait, I opened up. We're having
Yeah,
a,
we're in public hearing.
okay.
Yeah, you're still,
Sorry.
you're still in it.
sorry, you can go ahead, Mr. Kalishman.
Okay. I would just say that, you know, I have the unique perspective of being a parent of 3 kids in the Swampscott Public Schools, the principal of the middle school, and I've been working here and lived here basically my whole life. I don't think it's a secret that we're not exactly running on like with all these bells and whistles, and that everybody's working extremely hard. I'm so thankful constantly to the teachers and the staff and to Pam and our whole team, because I think we do, you know, as the data shows, like less. I mean, we do more with less. I think when you look at what Marbleheads and Linfield and everybody that we're compared to, I think what our staff and what we give to the students every day is incredible. So it's frustrating to me to look at the slide as a parent. You know, if I was just looking at this as a parent and saying, you know, why can't we get to those levels? Why can't we? It's funny, like we look at the health teacher. For me, that was always, you know, we wonder, oh, a kid's got a vape or this kid's struggling with mental health. Well, what do you think is going to happen if we keep having these cuts? It's kind of obvious, right? I mean, I'm not shocked when I see that. So, you know, I think that it's important for the town to get behind the fact that, you know, people move here for the schools, generally speaking. And I know that's why I moved back. And in order to keep the reputation that we have, it's time to start investing in the kids. And by doing so, you invest in the teachers and the staff. So again, I'm incredibly proud of the school district. I invite anybody that's making these decisions to come on to the middle school and see what we bring every single day. But I just think, like I said, if I didn't know the inner workings, I think I would feel really worried and concerned. Luckily for me, I know exactly what's happening on a day-to-day basis and how lucky our kids are to have the people working with them that they do. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're one of the reasons why.
I want to, can we respond to that? You know, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think your point is a good one, that we are making do with less. But I would like to believe that Swampscott should have more than just making do. And when I look specifically at those numbers that you presented us, Ms. Stella, about net school spending, that makes me sad. And you know, this goes back to what we've been talking about over the last couple of months, you know, about the 2.2 plus new growth and what that allows us to do, but really what it prevents us from doing. And, you know, we're not going to make any of the decisions here, but so first of all, I think that we have a problem with the idea that our budget is based on 2.2 plus new growth, because what that does, and it didn't really hit me until this year, especially because of the town is reporting such a big drop in that our operating budget is essentially being based on the hope of growth, as opposed to what we know is a finite amount of money, which is our taxes. So it would make sense if we had that little bit of growth. Since we have no idea what it is, how can we set up an operating system, you know, our operational costs on that? I know it's not a bulk of the budget for the 2.2, it only adds incrementally more, but it certainly adds enough that, you know, when we're sitting here looking at going into the next year and the town is looking to all its departments to make some pretty drastic cuts, you know, we're making cuts and our budget's still going up. So, you know, if it comes in that, you know, that there's less than 2.2 plus new growth, you know, where
what happens?
Yeah, the new growth is disturbing. That it's so much lower this year is really harsh because, like, it's one of those things we can't predict.
It seems like new
we don't
growth
know.
would be the kind of
And-
thing that supports new projects in town and not our schools. You know, a park or, you know, like new growth in town supports new growth as opposed to new growth in town supporting our standard, you know, operational costs in our schools.
Can't disagree.
So just to add on to that, I think, and I appreciate what Mr. Kalishman said as well. You know, I think throughout this whole process, I think where part of my thought process has been is, you know, where are we going to be a year from now, 2 years from now? And, you know, I have, you know, very serious concerns, you know, obviously I think everyone else does as well, but, you know, what our school district is going to look like to people that are thinking of coming here, or the people that are here, do they want to stay here? You know, and I agree, Amy, I think making do is not adequate. We shouldn't, you know, that shouldn't be our goal, the bar should be higher. You know, this is a place people want to come, and, you know, the bar should be set higher for that. And, you know, just, you know, I was actually just doing a little bit of research on, you know, what some of our peer districts have been doing. And, you know, I know they're going through a lot of the same discussions. So, you know, we're certainly not unique. Oh, yeah.
Can someone bring the gavel, please?
Yeah, so, you know, we're certainly not unique, but, oh, sorry.
Can you take it outside?
Folks, can you take it outside, please?
Sorry.
No, so anyway, just to kind of sum up, I know we're not unique, but, you know, I think it's important that, you know, since we have the larger audience tonight, that, you know, they're hearing this, because, you know, we've been living and breathing this, we all know it, but it's important that, you know, again, to kind of echo what Mr. Kalishman said, that, you know, as a parent, you know, you know, there is probably some concern out there, and rightly so.
Yeah, this isn't a criticism, Superintendent and Ms. Stella, of you and the budgets that you've
No,
built.
certainly not.
No, I hear what you're saying.
I appreciate what you are able to do, but it just, you know, I also think about all of the old time, you know, this is a town that's unique insofar as, like Mr. Kalishman, so many people come and move back here because of what kind of a town this is. And so what that also does is, you know, it brings a lot of talk of like the good old days, which is good and bad. But, you know, when I hear complaints and people complaining about the district and saying, you know, we used to rank so much better, or we had a better reputation, I can't help but look at that net school spending and think, well, you know, this is when you're fair to middling in terms of what the town is spending, then you're fair to middling.
Can I say one more thing about that? Do you want me to go?
Yeah, you need a
Absolutely.
microphone.
No.
Let's do one person.
I put him on the spot tonight. Sorry.
But now I can't stop. You put me on the spot, now I can't stop. I would say about like the good old days situation, I mean, I was there. It's not, yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I don't even know if they had school rankings back then. And the amount of incredible teaching and learning that's happening now, I would say, from my experience, blows away whatever I was doing when we had such highly ranked.
But imagine if we were fully funded.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, our kids are getting to, look at Swampscott, the kids are getting to incredible schools. And I know that's not everybody's end game, but if that's your end game, knowing that you can go through the Swampscott public school system and end up at Stanford or Northwestern or BC or wherever, if that's your end game, that makes me feel good. So to your point, yeah, imagine if we were fully funded and had the resources that we need. Because the thing is that a major difference is not just, you know, from when I went, but even 5 years ago, it's not just teaching math, science, and social studies or whatever anymore. Like, this is a whole new ballgame. So you can talk about class sizes 5 years ago, 7 years ago, we're probably okay at 25 or 26. Now they're not. So just another.
And something that you said a few months ago as it related to the MCAS and that final question that they took
Oh, they survey the kids?
Yeah, when they surveyed the kids, and the kids talked about whether or not they wanted to be in school and how well your school did versus its peers.
Yeah.
That is meaningful, but that also doesn't happen, in a vacuum. That you need those full supports in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, for those who don't know what we're talking about, the DESE after MCAS, they survey the kids and ask, do you feel valued? So after they test them, at nausea, they then ask them how they're feeling, and we're 4 and 5 times greater than the state average as far as kids who want to be there, feel connected with staff. So, yeah.
Kudos.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I would just add, and I think, again, it's not to, I mean, if anything, we're uplifting the schools at how well they're doing despite the chipping away that's been happening. And in the superintendent's letter in the budget book, you use the word workable. It's not ideal. We're not even meeting all of our goals. This is a workable number. And we're just bringing up, is that enough? Should workable be what we're aiming for?
Yeah, is that who we are
Every
as a
year.
community?
Sometimes, I mean,
Like,
sometimes.
why aren't we worth more?
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, you've been
And-
saying that
and-
for years. Is
I
this the
know.
best we deserve?
Right. And some years that may be the case, but this just feels like it's workable year after year after year, and that accumulates and starts to have
So
real.
as many schools are going to their towns and looking for overrides, I've gotten the question from people, why don't we have an override? I was like, we don't actually even need an override because
We
we're
don't.
undertaxing.
Right.
So we've talked about it amongst our group a lot, but it certainly hasn't gotten any traction. But, I don't know how sustainable 2.2 is. Actually, I do know, it's not sustainable. And so I think that I beg the town to really evaluate that, and to evaluate it at a time that isn't, like, well, we can't do it now, town meeting's coming up, or we can't do it now because we're taking the vote. Like, it just never seems that it's
Well,
now.
it always seems like the timing isn't right, and maybe the timing is bad again this year because the growth is so low, and maybe this is, this is definitely something we need to talk about. Like when do we get to tax at levy capacity, and when do we get to fund our schools a little more generously?
And not for nothing, we're seeing teacher strikes across the
That's
state.
5 days Newton right now.
And that's Newton, and
Right.
those are well-paid educators.
5 days.
So I would imagine that a lot of these financial troubles are coming our way.
It's really interesting, Amy, that you say that. I think there are two things. From a budget point of view, I agree. I believe we should be funding more than we are. What's interesting is just to go through these numbers and actually see the real numbers, because, I remember when I first even became involved with the schools, so you're talking when my oldest was 3, and I remember walking in to the superintendent's office at the time, and I tried all meeting, try to remember his name, and we asked him, how's the district going to pay for him? And I remember, in the old middle school office, he opens his drawer and just said, we will always have that money. I don't know if we'll always have that money. And it's really interesting to think about that, there was a time not too long ago, 10, 12 years, that the school committee would present one line item to the town. Take it, leave it, fund it, don't fund it. That's all you're getting, one number. We don't do that any longer, and I think it's smart. We really dig down into that. But I do get very concerned about we're not funding to what we need to fund. It's unfortunate. I think this budget is okay. I agree with you, Karen. It's okay. It's not great. Certainly could be better, and I guess probably certainly could be worse. It's okay. And I know later in the meeting I do want to have a discussion about circuit breaker a little bit more.
Feels depressing. All right, does anyone in the public have some public comments or want to ask some questions or talk? Slav, come down. Come on down. Real quick. Will you just
Hi.
say your name for
Yep,
everyone else?
I'm pro now. Mara Lau, Outlook Road. I have 4 kids, 2 graduated. 2002, we started here in kindergarten, and 2 at the high school. I'll come back to the thank yous, but thank you for your due diligence. I do try to listen to most of your meetings, and as grainy as they can be to listen to, I try to follow them as much as possible. So thank you very much. I really appreciate, Ms. Angelakis, your hands-on innovation pathways. That is a fantastic program. Hands-on learning, we know it works because it works with the little ones and it just works throughout our lives. So thank you. And just as a kind of a point of reference, I have a now freshman who applied to Essex Tech, and there was a little conversation, there was a little confusion with the application, so the phone call that I happened to have with an Essex Tech person said, we have 25 applications for that, freshman class. So I don't know if that helps you, maybe anticipating that there will be more interest, hopefully.
That's interesting, thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful. And I do want to say, it seems that, freshman seminar doesn't run anymore. I think that's a miss. I'm going to assume that's going to, from a staffing perspective at the high school, that I'm going to kind of just also piggyback upon, which is there's a number of very high classes at the high school, up to 30 in a math class. Post-COVID, math online was weak, to say the least, and very hard to deliver that service.
After I had mentioned that as part of, I know that the core classes are high, and that's something we are trying to address.
Right, yeah, no, I knew that, and I'm listening, but I'm just going to, state it's noticed by parents as well. Thank you. And then, kind of also with that I think that small class sizes for Swampscott has really been our superpower over the years. It has, historically, we have had small class sizes from, through all grades. And I just think that that's been a tremendous value. And I think it's been one of our superpowers. I really do. I think municipal government is kind of like where our students all learn. Right, school is municipal government. This is where our kids kind of learn how to become good citizens of the world. And so the impact that we all have here is just tremendous. And, in schools and in our little town. So also with leadership, I do want to point out that so much progress has been made at your helm, Ms. Angelakis, because there were disappointing superintendents ahead of you that that really just didn't get the work done. So thrilling, we are opening up a new elementary school. In 2002, when we sent Connor to kindergarten, the scuttle on the playground, I'm going to be like my mother-in-law saying the same stories over and over again. The scuttle on the playground was that, we'll never finish Hadley, we'll have a new school building. So I'm finally, Connor will be 27 in May. I'm so glad that students are getting a new school building. It's just thrilling and decades overdue, but thrilling. And I also want to point out that when this building was opened, that, Connor was moving to 5th grade at the time, and Michonne was closing, we had 3 weeks' notice. So I am so glad that, those days are behind us, but I also think it's important to kind of remember where we come from so we don't repeat them. All right, thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Lau. Would anyone else like to make a comment sitting here? And let me see, I don't see any hands raised online. All right, then. I just need someone to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close it.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we come to the vote. So we have the budget book in front of us, and I think first we vote on all the cost centers. So we're going to go through the cost centers one at a time.
I just want to, can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Between last week and this week, you did add in the,
These numbers include the 155.
okay, so that includes the multi,
The interventionist
Yep.
and the after-dark funding.
okay, thank you. I know that we said that, but I just
Yeah, no,
needed to,
repeat it.
yeah.
Do we vote cost center to cost center?
Yeah.
We vote every cost center, and then we vote the whole school budget.
Can we get some clarification on that? Do we vote cost center?
So my understanding is historically, the
Yeah.
committee has, but technically, it just votes the bottom line.
Right.
Again, it's, I guess, the will of the committee.
It-
There's no
correct.
law that says you have to, this is the way it's been done historically here.
I want to go ahead and vote the cost centers personally because we live and die by those until we vote to move money from cost center to cost center.
Well, I think what's important about voting cost centers this year, at least at a high level, is that it's not every cost center, but that by, I think it's important because of the work that you guys have done, you know, and in that, in some areas, that even though it's a 5% growth, that it's not across the board, that 5% is really contained into very small pieces, particularly special education. And I think that's, it might just be lip service, but I think it's important to point that out. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I think
Yes.
so.
I don't.
And I think it
know that.
acknowledges
don't
all the work that was
carry
done
the
to
way,
get to
yeah.
that point as well.
Okay.
I mean, I like the idea of one bottom line number because that's ultimately what it is. And that's certainly how you and your office operate, superintendent. But when I look at the fact that, that part of it is a 5.4 growth in special education, I think that's worth separating out. Not for it to be cut, but just so that it does point to the work that you did in, that the elementary school only grew by 1.9.
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5.
All right, so if no one is against that, let's just,
So how many numbers does that give us?
there's five cost centers.
Okay.
So can someone make a motion to vote on the administrative cost center for $1,582,162?
I'll make the motion.
In a second?
Second?
Second.
Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Someone make a motion to approve the general education cost center for $15,835,633.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And second, Glenn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Everyone?
No.
No, not you.
Not me.
So 4, and 1 opposed. Can someone make a motion to approve the special education cost center for $10,696,384?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Karen, all those in favor? Aye. And Glenn's,
I'm a no.
and Glenn's a no. A motion on the school's facility, a motion to approve the school facility cost center for $2,771,920.
I make a motion to, exactly what you said?
Approve? Second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
So that's a unanimous one. And then the last one is a motion to approve the district-wide programming cost center for $1,714,455.
So moved?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And then the big one, a motion to vote on the total FY25 school budget for $32,600,554.
I'll make the motion.
Nice. Who's got the second? Come on, brave
second.
fellows. Thanks, John. All those in favor? We have 2, 3.
You gotta
I vote begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly.
Okay, well,
It should be higher.
so we have 3 in favor and 2 opposed?
Correct.
Okay, well, passes.
I'm glad you did that.
All right, thank you for your hard
Yeah,
work
thank
on
you.
this.
Yeah, really, in all seriousness, really great. This is, in all the years I've done this, this has been the most laid out, crystal clear, where each dollar is going from. The historic's been really interesting to see, and I think this will only help us as we go forward. I really do.
Well, Cheryl and I have talked about appreciating the questions that have come from general government side, because it's really made us lay out those slides. And as this committee has said on more than one occasion, the narrative that is talked about on our behalf is switched to our own narrative by providing those kinds of
Correct.
historical data. And I think, we're telling the story. We're telling the story with historical data, and it's in black and white, and it can't be refuted. So I, again, want to thank Ms. Stella for all of her hard work on.
It feels empowering for me at least to have this data, to have the historical data.
You, data?
I know, well, just to it's nice, I always sort of understand the budget,
Right.
but to delve further in it, and I think as chair, I've never been this before, so I know I'm privy to some deeper conversations, and I really appreciate that I understand this so much better than I did before. But I think a lot of it is having historical, talking about it historically, I think is really helpful.
So if I can just read something that I wrote at the possibility of beating a dead horse. I think there's a problem in the way that our special ed stabilization fund is handled. Having money in that account should be for extreme circumstances, ones that are unpredictable. However, the schools have been forced to spend down our circuit breaker account rather than the fiscally prudent choice of holding it on a one-year cycle. What this has done is forced us into using our savings account, in quotes, almost immediately. And more importantly, what it does is it removes the district from its fiscal responsibilities and puts the town administrator and the select board in charge of that budget, because that requires a town meeting vote. This requirement is prudent when there are extraordinary circumstances, but what we're facing within the first year of having this stabilization fund is the use of emergency monies, and it effectively puts the town administrator on the school board, despite the town charter not including that position on our board. I think this situation is untenable, and as of December, when the select board chose not to turn over our state funding until some later date, that moved our district into an even sharper level of underfunding. This has happened a few years ago with technology, happened again last year, and it's happening again. And while I trust that the tri-chair meetings are informative for the people at the table, I don't think that they're productive as we're headed into a new year already underfunding in order to meet soft measures. I've been watching the select board meetings, and there have not been discussions around our concerns. So I don't know what happens after that tri-chair meeting. By soft measures, I refer to the 2.2% growth, 2% growth plus new. The select board voted on the tax rate without any input from the schools. And while other towns are fighting for overrides, we just need to fight for not taxing to a level. We need to fight to tax at a level that actually meets our needs.
Well said.
Independent of what Amy said, I'd like to have a discussion about circuit breaker and about the 1.8 million and change. I've really thought just a lot about this. I've done some research on it, and Ms. Stella, thank you for sending the DESI guidelines to us. Just so I can read into the public record, if you'll indulge me for a sec. One out of this came from this Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Elementary, what's it stand for?
In secondary.
Thank you. Should know that. This came from them. So 1 out of every 5 public school students in Massachusetts has some type of disability that affects the student's ability to make effective educational progress and requires special education services. I'll let that sit in and kind of think about that for a second. The cost of special education services is substantial and growing. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and federal governments provide financial support for those services through 4 main funding streams: Chapter 70, Circuit Breaker, and IDEA. DESI guidelines on circuit breaker balance. DESI regulations allow communities and school districts to carry forward up to 1 year's worth of state reimbursement. DLS advises communities build balances in their special education circuit breaker accounts in years when actual costs compare favorably with the budget, so that in years when special education costs increase unexpectedly or the circuit breaker reimbursement drops, there will be some circuit breaker revenue to cover any unforeseen costs. And lastly, building a circuit breaker balance is a good management practice as it eliminates some of the risk associated with these unprecedented special education costs. And I'm going to add my own bullet. It puts the educators in charge. I would like to make a motion to direct the chair to do some research on adding a warrant item to the upcoming spring town meeting, the main town meeting. We request approximate $1,861,660 from the town to go into circuit breaker. It's not for general ed spending, it's not for special ed spending this year, it's to build the circuit breaker to be what it was historically. I just want to have a conversation about it. The board may not agree, that's fine, I just want to have a conversation. Because I'm really worried about all these increases in special education, costs for sending students out of district. They're not going to get any lower. And if they bumped up 14% and there's a kindergartner, that kindergartner is going to be in district for 18 years. And you start extrapolating those dollars, and unless we do something about it, it's going to swallow not only the town, but it's going to kill the district. That's just what I'm bringing to the table.
So I agree
Yeah.
with the warnings and with everything. My question is, as a district, are we allowed to, is that money held any differently than any other money in our budget? And are we allowed as a town to supplement? Like, if we've already spent it, are we allowed to put money in as circuit breaker money?
The short answer is no. The only mechanism with which that could happen would be if the town funded the budget, the 1.8 million above what the school committee is requesting. And so if they funded the school committee's request plus the 1.8 million, then we wouldn't be tapping into our circuit breaker at all.
In the first place, for 25.
This year, which would then build the balance to roll into the next year.
So we could still do it because we wouldn't have, okay. So we could still do it because we would, in essence, be bumping up the budget and never touching the circuit breaker next year. Okay.
So then is the real request then to make our budget and I think it would be 1.4.
Right,
Because
excuse
it's
me, right, because
it's
the
1.8, and
My
then we
apologies.
spent it down to 4. So is the real ask then an additional 1.4 million? But maybe, to your point, not adding it into this budget, but as a,
Almost like a supplemental.
yeah.
Right, no, it is. So, right, because we haven't spent it yet, it's 25. So we're not backfilling anything, we're asking for it ahead of time, so it would still potentially work.
I guess basically at the end of the day, I'd like to ask the town to fund the 1.8 less 450.
Right, and they can say yes or no.
Right. And how do we go about doing that? Keeping in mind that, and why I didn't bring this up as we were having the budget discussions, because the 32 million number is a rock solid number. I didn't want to muddy the waters with this. So, and I also don't want to go for an override or request an override, because I don't think it would pass. And B, I don't think that's the right mechanism either.
Well, it's not an override anyway.
Yeah, we don't need an override
Okay.
when we're taxing
Yeah.
under 2.5%.
Okay.
And that, we could request that it come from free cash, which they don't like to do, but if it's to basically just fill that bucket as a one-time measure, that's not that far
So
out.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know the mechanism to do it, but I just want to have this discussion of, I just get so worried that this circuit breaker is really causing us a problem.
I agree.
Causing the students a problem.
I agree.
Causing the budget a problem.
Ms. Stella?
So if the money was in, if the money was in the circuit breaker, would we be still asking the town to fund above and beyond our expectations?
No.
Why,
Like,
it would not certainly be 5.1. So if we got the additional money appropriated
Like
to
we-
24 and then it rolled into 25, it would obviously adjust our 25 numbers.
but we would still be asking for, we would still need some money.
Correct.
Sure.
To cover what we're incurring this year and into next year.
Yes.
So we have to think about, that our ask to help us with above and beyond expenses that are unexpected versus, I mean, those have to be differentiated then from tuitions or students. I mean, maybe those just mean assessments and increases in, unusual increases in tuition.
Well, it's special ed, it's the circuit breaker, so however circuit breaker would be used. Because circuit breaker has to be used within the year.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but we're also trying to ask the town right now to help us with extraordinary expenses that were completely unanticipated, like this. I mean, students are one thing, right? Because that should have been absorbed in circuit breaker, right? But the
We asked for
increase-
the busing and.
well, that's like outside of special ed, but the tuition increase and the NEC assessment, right? Those are like the big ones, right?
Yep.
So, and that, we still need to ask for that because the circuit breaker isn't enough to cover that.
Right.
Like, we still need, do you know what I'm saying? It's not enough.
So
not
so
enough.
really, funding circuit breaker is the equivalent of funding the special education, I always blank on this, stabilization fund. It's not, but this provides us actual stabilization.
Right, but in this case, we need this plus stabilization, right? I mean, am I like not interpreting it the right way? Like,
We would likely need, the budget would likely still grow more than 2% plus new
Right.
growth.
But certainly not 5.
Correct.
right.
Right.
So I guess the question is how do we accomplish that? Again, partnering with the town, because we want to partner with the town. I don't want to, like I said, again, the budget is fine the way it is. But how do we get across to the town meeting that this bucket, this dollar amount, 1.8 less 450, is something that, their district needs in order to have some sort of cost certainty going forward? So whether that is asking for money out of the general fund, whether that's asking for money out of some bucket, and I don't know the specifics on how to do that, but I just felt it was worthwhile of discussion by us to just talk about this and how do we accomplish that?
So what I like about this is that it almost provides like a reset to sort of bring us back to like a new baseline. And then we'll sort of identify that the work that you're doing is not 5% growth, that it is less. I mean, I'm not communicating this well, but it's essentially a reset on.
It acknowledges these one-time
Yeah.
huge expenses, but also acknowledges that the team has worked to keep it at a reasonable increase,
We
right?
didn't get that memo about the funding that's coming in. So do we share that, and is that the money, the mechanism?
Well, I don't know.
Well, can you guys talk about it?
There's government, whatever was passed.
Cheryl was articulating for us internally, like, what is the timeline on the money that's coming back to the town for the new school? And there are like 3 buckets. And we weren't clear on timeline, we weren't clear on usage. So to answer our question, she typed out some really important information, because that could, like the National Grid, the MSBA, this IRA. So, is that where the money comes from versus free cash? So I think, we were doing it to clarify it in our minds. We need to share that with you all. And maybe.
So.
It's weird because the timing of this money isn't going to happen in this budget cycle.
Right.
So it's got to be like a
front the money
promise that it's coming.
and then pay it back.
Well,
right?
and we know what happened with promised money.
Right.
But that's a good point, though. And that's why I'm bringing it up, and that really even makes more of a partnership with the town side.
Mm-hmm.
Because this, what this budget book explains to even the most novice a person who understands, municipal or school finance, it spells out in detail why a circuit breaker is so important, and why what's happened with the district losing the circuit breaker, that, we're heading over a cliff, so to speak. So I think it would be worth having conversations with the town about, we need to find a way to fund whatever it was, 1.8, 1, whatever that number is. And, we have this buckets of money coming back. Maybe it's not today, but as you said, can the town front this money to give the district and the town, by the way, okay, partnership.
Certainty, yeah.
Cost certainty, and then, work it that way. And I guess that's a fine with me, just a way to start this.
I think also with the governor's budget, there's more circuit breaker money coming in, right? More Chapter 70 or circuit breaker money coming in?
So the governor's budget, circuit breaker is pretty much level funded. However, Chapter 7, we are getting increased, at least the governor's budget. Now, granted, it has to go through a couple more levels here. But with the governor's budget, our net school aid increase is $286,000. So that's fairly substantial.
And that's $286,000 as is, or is that $286,000 because we have more kids with special ed needs?
It's because the enrollment has increased and the population.
The demographics.
Yeah.
Demographics.
So it's because our costs have gone up, so they're not giving us necessarily
it's not
more money, they're just refunding us money that we've already spent, that is.
Well, no,
higher.
this is,
No?
no.
Well,
Chapter 70.
but we're getting.
We're getting more money. We're getting about 270, I think you said.
But we're spending more
280
money.
a year,
It's
yeah.
not like we're spending the same amount of money and we're getting more money.
But that just reduces what the town has to give us, right?
I do like the word reset, because.
Unless they give it to us.
And I do like the dollar amount, how we're figuring out the dollar amount, because it really is addressing that OSD unexpected cost, right? So it's not, we're pulling a number out of the air.
Correct.
We're making an argument for resetting an unexpected expense
A
that
very
really put our budget out of whack.
And-
very
and it's-
specific
And it's a
bucket.
capital expense. So we're using our operating budget to pay a capital expense,
Wait, why is it a capital expense?
because we're fixing their heating.
Yeah, but that's not the
that's
OSD,
different.
that's a different one.
That's not
but-
the out of business.
Okay, sorry,
You're
KOG.
Right.
Right.
Having a great experience. You're right about that. You're right about that. But
Right.
also, the more I think about this idea, it's a number that is specific to a need. And there is money coming in because of the new elementary school project that I would like to think the school department should have a piece of. And so maybe we start the conversation, but putting an article in the spring warrant and getting up and explaining all of this again may be a way to go.
Yeah, but I think it's worth, I think we should put together something, not that Cheryl needs more work, But
Cheryl loves
now that you have this nice fancy
I know.
title, I think you can do some more
Oh, guess
for us.
what? Didn't tell you about that with the title.
I'm just kidding. You know, sort of like the pros and cons of having the money in a circuit breaker versus having the money, having the town fund it through stabilization. Because there are pros to having it. I mean, the certainty is one pro for sure.
Well, I mean,
The ability to prepay, which we've getting, again, which we don't
So-
have
and we're
the ability
spending
to do
and
anymore.
obviously, if you put it in this other fund, the name just stabilization, it just drops out of my head every time. If it's in a stabilization fund, it could sit there for longer than a year, which is why it should be a savings account and not something that you're going to every year, because circuit breaker has to be spent every year.
Right, like there should be a general school stabilization fund in general for some of these really crazy unexpected expenses that just pop up, like our bad estimates on what the operating cost of the school would be, or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
saying there should be some general thing that is like a savings account,
There are so
right?
many, there's
But-
so many stabilization accounts
but
here in this town,
special
except
ed
for the
should-
schools.
I don't know. We worked so hard to get that special ed stabilization account, and
Yeah, it was never the intent to have happen what happened.
To have
That
it
was
be
done
in
with
place
good
of circuit
faith,
breaker.
and it
right.
was done with good intent, and it felt good. And then it just, with the 14, it just didn't work the way. Yeah,
Right,
the
we have
timing.
to- I think this is really good food for thought.
So
to think
you made a
about.
motion, so
So, wait, before we do that, so is this something that should be, is this something that should be a big part of our tri-board discussion? Or is this?
It might need to be, for sure, if that happens, and let me see what the format is. First, it was just intended to present the budget, present it to the finance committee, but it might morph into something more than that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, the main point of it was to present the budget to finance committee, like the committee always does, but invite select board to attend, which I think is a great idea. But there's nothing to say, you know, when Pam and I are discussing the budget, or when we wrap up our discussion of the budget, that the committee doesn't either interject during our presentation and have their own comments. It's not,
Right.
it's not meant to just be Pam and I speaking.
Yeah.
Or at the end, if this is a topic that you want to raise, certainly, I think it makes sense for the committee to discuss these broader concerns and these broader topics that you want to discuss with the two boards.
So I'd like to make a motion that we direct the chair, superintendent, designee, et cetera, to look into a possibility of, I don't know how to word this, but gaining back the circuit breaker money for FY '25, $1.4 million and change, and just to start having these discussions that would impact FY '25.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Any other discussion on
Specifically towards a warrant article.
Specifically towards the
So, I will, I'm thinking about you, Suzanne. Do you, I don't know, do you want to do that? Or since this is your idea, should you be doing that?
I have to defer to the chair, however you feel.
Well, I think that.
Or do you need time to figure it
Cheryl's
out?
point, we should definitely bring it up if we have this meeting. We should definitely start that discussion.
Yeah.
And we should, or we can see how it goes from there. I am perfectly happy suggesting it. I'm perfectly happy working on it. I might need some help.
Could run it by council
Yeah.
to even see if
I
it's.
think it really, that's a great
I mean?
point, Karen. I think probably one of the first calls should be is to council, and try to explain to the school committee council what we're trying to achieve. Again, in a very positive light to the town. We're not throwing any bombs, we're not doing any of that. We're being completely above board. We have a budget, we've approved the budget, but we still have this hole.
But we want to reset.
And we want a reset of something that really we desperately need. So I'm happy to help. I agree with you. I think the tri-chair is the place to start.
Well, we have a tri-chair tomorrow. We can start it, but then I think we have we're probably, I know that the chair of the finance committee and the chair of the select board were both talking about having a meeting together
Right.
where our budget can be presented to the finance committee and the select board at the same time. And a suggestion was at a select board meeting at the beginning of February.
Great.
So we would all be invited to that.
Great.
We would have, so the three boards would be there, and
Yeah.
that we could definitely have
Great.
this conversation during the budget presentation.
Right, because, I mean, someone on the town side may have a different approach to this. And I think,
Yeah.
and again, this is where I really want to emphasize, to me, this is a team and a partnership with the town to figure out this budget issue we have and to reset the budget, because that will be positive for the town side as well.
I agree.
All right?
All right, people, let's take a vote on that, because we didn't vote. Vote on Glenn's
In
motion.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next thing is the school committee chair update, the tri-chair. I have nothing to update, so Amy and John, if you guys want to go ahead and do the bargaining update, I guess.
We had a very productive meeting yesterday, and I am asking for an executive session to bring everybody up to speed. And that's booked for just ahead of our next select board meeting. I mean, school committee meeting.
Something you're trying to tell us?
No.
Definitely not.
And so when's that meeting?
2 weeks.
February 8th?
February 5th, right? 8th.
So
Cool.
we'll have information for you then.
Great.
Super, and the last item is consent agenda, but since we only have one
I'm sorry,
item.
my apologies. Just on a quick subcommittee comment, I am joining the special education PAC meeting tomorrow morning, just to answer any questions. I've got a couple questions my way about budget, so I'm going to hop in with Ms. Raymond and just join that tomorrow morning.
See that?
And Suzanne, did you say there was something about the 7th? Was there a meeting?
No, I was just saying if the select board and the finance committee and us discuss the budget, it'll be that night.
Oh, okay.
So that's the Wednesday before our
It's the
meeting.
Wednesday, it's
All
the
right.
Wednesday before our meeting.
And you'd let us know if we.
Yeah,
need-
yeah,
okay.
I haven't
Okay.
confirmed anything,
Gotcha.
the date's out there as a potential. Because we wanted to do it earlier
Yeah.
in February as possible.
Good idea.
All right, so can someone make a motion to approve the regular session minutes from January 11th?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second, all those in favor? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make the motion to say goodbye.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, that was a good, efficient
Thank you.
meeting.
Great.